ያለች ቆንጆ ለኔ ትትረፍ እንዳረጋት አንቺ ቤቢ ሳዋሌ 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 ተረጋጊ
Good evening, dear listeners from all around the world. This is Farida and Nabourema broadcasting live from the Washington, D.C. area. Welcome to Countdown. Today we will be receiving two guests from the Eastern African country of Eritrea who will be giving us more insight of the politics of their country. Our guests are both leaders of the Eritrean Youth Solidarity and Change, which was founded in the midst of Arab Spring by members of the Eritrean diaspora who wanted to form an organization that would serve the Eritrean community to help newly arrived Eritrean refugees and call for the implementation of constitutional governance in Eritrea. An organization that came to life in the California Bay Area, the EYSC is now a multi-continental organization with decentralized branches in several countries in Europe and North America, with over 12,000 members. So please help me welcome Mr. Daniel Mikael and Mr. Aaron Berhane. Daniel is in California. He is currently serving as the chairman of the board of directors of the EYSC. He is responsible for leadership, management, and the effective performance of the organization. Daniel is also a writer and a human rights activist. He is the co-founder of EYSC, and he is also a pro-democracy activist. Mr. Aaron Berhane is the EYSC, media director, and is responsible for overseeing all media and communication of the organization. Aaron is also co-founder of and former editor-in-chief of Eritrea's now banned largest independent newspaper, Setit. He escaped arrest in 2001 by fleeing to Sudan and subsequently settling in Toronto. He started Mefti, a monthly newspaper serving Toronto's 20,000-strong Eritrean community. He is also a member of the Writers in Exile Committee of PEN Canada. So let us welcome once again together Mr. Daniel Mikael from Los Angeles, California, and Mr. Aaron Berhane from Toronto, Canada. Good evening, Daniel, and good afternoon, Aaron, I believe it's not. Good afternoon, Aaron. How are you guys doing?
Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. We would like to thank you for joining us in Countdown on Stereo Radio. We are very excited to have you today. So before we get started with the interview, allow me to give our listeners, please, because I believe you already know that, a short briefing of your country, so that they get to know more about Eritrea. So Eritrea is a country of the Horn of Africa with 117,600 square kilometers and 6 million people, bordered by Ethiopia to the south, Sudan to the west, and Djibouti to the east. From 1881 to 1941, it was an Italian colony, just like Somalia and Libya. Somalia and Libya were later on granted their independence, but Eritrea remained under British administration. From 1941 to 1952, it was handed over it was under British administration under the supervision of the United Nations. Eritreans wanted to get the independence, but the powers, the colonial powers, did not want that. So in 1952 to 1961, there was a federation of Eritrea and Ethiopia. Ethiopia abolished the federation, however, in 1961 and annexed Eritrea as a province. From 1961 to 1991, there has been a 30-year guerrilla war to free Eritrea, led by the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, EPLF. Isaias Afewerki, who was the leader of the movement, has become president. And in the 1993 referendum, the Eritreans voted for independence by 99.8%. From 1994, the EPLF became a sole political party, which turned to People's Front for Democracy and Justice. And in 1997, a new constitution was ratified, but unfortunately never implemented. In 1998, a border war started with Ethiopia, which claimed at least 20,000 Eritrean and 80,000 Ethiopian lives. There has been no peace and no war since then. It's just kind of like a tense situation. From September 2001, in September 2001, top 15 cabinet ministers called for the government to reform and to implement the constitution. They were summarily placed in prison and no one knows where they are till today. A number of them are believed to have died. Private press was closed and thousands of civilians, religious leaders, journalists and community leaders were put in prison. And today, Eritrea is the only country in Africa without a constitution or private press. No freedom of gathering, no election, no due process of law. Approximately 250,000 young people aged 18 to 35 have escaped the country, most of them illegally, just victims of human traffickers, kidnappers, and organ harvesters. In 2010 and 2011, the United Nations sanctioned Eritrea for its support of terrorist organizations in Somalia. And in 2011, the movement for democratic change to get rid of the dictator intensified, and the EYSC, whose leaders we have today with us, are part of it. In January 2013, earlier this year, there has been an attempted coup by the Eritrean military, but this has failed. They were calling for prisoners to be released and for a constitution to be implemented. So I hope, Aaron and Daniel, that I have been as much accurate as possible on the history, on the back and political background of Eritrea. So I will start with Daniel. Please tell us in your own words, how will you describe your country to someone who has never heard from Eritrea in the past?
Absolutely. By the way, thank you, Farida, for this opportunity, and I actually wish it was under different circumstances that we are here to tell you more about Eritrea, because
thank you.
Unfortunately, what we have to talk about tonight probably the sad aspect of our story. Otherwise, I wish it was about culture and sports and other great things that we have as well. So the best way to describe Eritrea is, of course, for a lot of Africans, probably already know of Eritrea or have heard of Eritrea before. But
Daniel, would you mind speaking up a little bit? Because I think we have a very low...
let me switch this then, sorry.
Okay, it's okay. It happens.
Is this better?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize to you and your listeners as well. Let me start all over. The best way to describe Eritrea is, of course, we call it a small country in Africa, but there are a number of other countries that are much smaller than Eritrea.
Such as such as Togo, my country.
Exactly. In fact, geographically speaking, it's probably much bigger than Togo.
Absolutely.
Comparatively, it's geographically, it's a little bigger than, I believe, England. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are in the United States, you can compare it to the size of maybe Florida.
Okay.
That being the geographic size of it, roughly about 4 to 5 million people is the estimate. One of the mysteries of Eritrea is that even the Eritrean people do not know what the current population is.
Okay, because I got 6 million from my research. I'm sorry.
And they don't know. So we always say roughly about 4 to 5 million people.
Okay.
And it's, of course, bordered by, like you said, by Ethiopia, Sudan, and the Red Sea. Mm-hmm. And a little part by Djibouti as well.
Okay.
And it became independent in 1993 officially, mm-hmm. but the war with Ethiopia, the war for independence, ended in 1991, mm-hmm. 2 years earlier. So it's actually the only country in Africa before South Sudan that became independent of another African country. So that's also a side note to our history. Okay. Hopefully this will be enough for the introduction.
That is a very good insight. Thank you, Daniel. I will turn to Aaron. Eritrea's ruling regime has been described as one of the most authoritarian one in the world, and in a New York Times article that I read, it is called African North Korea. What do you have to say about that, Aaron?
Thank you, Farida, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Aaron.
Unfortunately, the Eritrean president is able to be known one of the most dictators in the world. It is very sad, as an Eritrean, to hear your leader is, call it such things because of his stupid character. He's the most notorious leader. He has used every colonizers used it to divide and rule our own people. In Eritrea, there are 50% Christian and 50% Muslim. And they use it to live in peace. But the colonizers use it to play different game in order to let the people fight each other. And this president is doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
He uses religion, ethnicity, regionalism, just in order to create conflict among the people.
Okay.
So as a result, he can prolong his power. So he's a very, very notorious person. He has arrested about 30,000 people without filing any charge against them. And a number of people have been executed during the 30 years war against Ethiopia or after the independence of the country. And he has jailed many people who used it to work and lead the country with him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the most notorious person. He doesn't allow freedom of speech or religion or movement. The country is in a complete prison. So it is an open-air prison.
Mm-hmm.
Economically, during his time, it is declining, day after day, year after year. So he is the most horrible leader in the world because he's not able to feed his own people.
Mm-hmm.
He's not able to create harmony among his own people. He's not able to create good relationship with his neighbors. So
Okay.
he's the most notorious person. So that's why they call him the first dictator in the world. So it is worse than the North Korea. So I totally agree with the New York Times.
I see, Aaron.
report.
But there is something very interesting about the president of Eritrea, Isaias Afewerki. It is the fact that he was the leader of the independence movement. He was this guy who was preaching freedom, independence, liberty, and was defending democracy, the right of people to choose their own leaders, to rule themselves, etc., etc. But how has this change happened? How did he go from being a human rights, democracy, freedom, liberty, independence fighter to a dictator, a tyrant, a despot? I want you to tell us what happened, what might have led to his change in ruling and his political convictions.
Okay. Is it for me or?
Yeah, Aaron.
Daniel?
Yeah, for you, Aaron, since
Okay.
you're the one who gave us.
Okay. Yeah. So, one of the things, he was a very popular leader during the armed struggle.
Okay.
And he played some positive role in mobilizing the people. And generally, the Eritrean people are very resilient people.
Mm-hmm.
So, since every Eritrean citizen were looking for the independence of the country, and they do their best, to avoid every difference they have, and they become together, they united together to fight our colonizers, which is Ethiopia. And he used that leverage. And the popularity that was able to come is as a result of this united force who was looking for a certain specific goal, which was independence.
Mm-hmm.
So once he became a leader, what you call a president of the country by default, because he was a leader of the armed movement, and he, got intoxicated by the popularity or by the system he created. And his intention or his ambition was not only to liberate Eritrea, but to go beyond that. So he used, he exploited, the illiteracy of the people. Unfortunately, about 50% of our people are illiterate. Mm-hmm. And he created a clique that could help him achieve his dream. So he changed completely the way he governed the country. He was supposed to lead the country towards democracy, but he happened to be the first person who stood against the democracy. So I guess what changed during that time is he has been like that for many years, but we were not aware because we were all fighting, we were together. But once he got the power, because the demand and the desire of the people and his desire is different, because the people's desire is to have a democratic government, to have a democratic country. But his desire is still to exploit the people and use the people in order to achieve his ultimate goal, to lead the country forever, maybe for generations to come, to his children, maybe grandchildren. So I guess the mentality is changed at that time, I believe.
I see. Thank you very much, Aaron. My next question is for Daniel. I would like to know, where does President Afewerki get his power from? Is he supported by the military, by any foreign force? Because obviously it seems that the Eritrean people are not very fond of him. Where does he get his power and support from? This is for you, Daniel.
Yes, thank you, Farida. One thing that makes Eritrea's case very peculiar is that there is no, we call it a dictatorial system or a dictatorial regime, but essentially it's actually a one-man authoritarian rule. Mm-hmm. But people compare it to North Korea, but at least in North Korea there is a system behind the power. Here it works very much like a one-man, totally, literally one-man control, where the way he managed to control the population and even his own cabinet ministers and the military and the people who are around him is by sheer fear. Because anybody who opposes him, or even anybody who thinks of opposing him or voicing their opinion, they are made to disappear into thin air. So what rules in Eritrea is fear. So somehow, over the years, and if you count the number of years he has been in power during the liberation movement, and now the last 20 to 23 years, we're talking about over 4 decades. So over the last 40 years, he has perfected the system where he can do his maneuvers and make people disappear. Mm-hmm. And because of this system, people don't trust each other. Nobody so far has been able successfully to congregate together, create a movement against him from within the country to get rid of him. Finally, this chain is about starting to break, but I believe that is the reason for him so successfully being a one-man authoritarian ruler in such a small country.
Okay. Thank you very much, Daniel. We have one of our listeners online calling from a 347 number. Who are we speaking to, please? Hello.
Mikael.
Hi, Mikael. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. I'm okay.
Thank you very much for joining us. Do you have a question for our guests?
No, yet. I just joined the conversation. I want to listen to you because I always see your posting in Facebook, and I would like to to listen what's the conversation going.
Oh, okay. We see. Thank you, Mikaela, for calling us. We have a listening number that you can call and kind of just listen to the conversation in case you don't have to ask a question. This is for those who want to ask questions or who want to talk to our guest. So I'll give you that number. I'll be giving it later, please, if you don't mind.
Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Hold on 1 second.
Okay, no problem. Yeah. So, sorry about that, listeners. Thank you, Daniel and Aaron. We'll be going on with the interview. Also, I'll be opening the mic for all of those who want to join the conversation and ask questions to our guests, Daniel Mikael and Aaron Berhane from the EYSC, the Eritrean Youth Solidarity for Change. My next question goes to Daniel again. Daniel, my question: what is the interest of the Eritrean government in wanting to stop the Eritrean people from leaving the country? Because from my research, I found out that hundreds of thousands of Eritrean people leave the country unlawfully, sometimes exposing their lives and taking huge risks, like the one that led to the Lampedusa tragedy. And I would like to know why the government is holding on the people, because we know some countries that are also totalitarian, but in these countries it doesn't seem like there is like there is no real intention from the government to stop the people from leaving. There is some freedom of movement, and I feel like there is no freedom of movement in Eritrea. Why the government want to keep the Eritrean people inside of the country?
Yeah, that's a great question, and in fact, it's related to the question.
I want the number, please.
Just 1 second, Mukaila. I was gonna give it to you. Just 1 second. Okay, but you can have it now. It is 832-280-0673. 832.
What's the number?
832. 832.
Yeah.
280.
280.
0673.
0673.
And you have to select -1. You have to press on -1.
Okay.
No, not that, sorry, just 1 or 5.
Okay.
You enter the number and then you select 1 or 5.
Okay.
Thank you very much. You can also hear that on our website. You can also hear it from our website. If you have a laptop, you can hear it on our website on www.sterionradio.com. And Sterion is spelled STIRION So thank you very much, Mukaila. And we'll just stay tuned. Okay, bye-bye. Yes, Daniel, I'm back to you.
Okay, I guess that's the fun part of doing a live show.
That is true. Thank you very much for collaborating with us.
Going back to it, if I understood your question, it is what is the incentive of the Eritrean government to basically block people from leaving the country legally?
Yes.
That's why they resort to illegal means, and especially the young people.
Mm-hmm.
And earlier you asked a good question to Aaron, and he answered it properly. On how you would describe the leader, the dictator, and during the liberation movement, when they were guerrilla fighters, of course, they, in addition to people volunteering to fight for freedom, they were also surrounding people and conscripting them into the army. And what Isaias Afewerki has not done to date is he has not converted himself and his regime and the system from being mountain guerrilla fighters to leading a state and a member of the United Nations country. So he's basically continuing the same style that he did before independence, where everybody, including students and parents and every citizen, is basically essentially belongs to the government. And that is to say, they are, for the most part, they don't earn a living. They are not paid. Wow. What is supposed to be a national service and legally, at least for a year and a half, has extended into 17, 18, even up to 20 years now.
Wow.
So it's about controlling the people, and for some reason the lessons this dictator learned is something to do with Mao and the way he did administer China when he was around. Unfortunately, he didn't learn that system did not work.
Okay.
But sad for us, that is what we are seeing, and that's the incentive, is to block everybody from leaving so that he can make them work for free, work for low wages, and develop the country. So this is the only thing he knows, probably.
So that is like a forced labor type of way. And you did mention China. Do you think that Afewerki is closer to the east? By the east, I mean like China, Russia, the communist countries, than he is to the west, like the United States, the United Kingdom, European Union, and stuff like that. Do you think his views are closer to the communist views? Yes, that's for you, Daniel.
Yes, in his early years, he was actually trained in China.
Okay.
In the 1960s. And just like many African, a lot of third world revolutionaries of the 1960s, a lot of them were left-leaning. Either they became socialists or trying to espouse communism. So that a lot of the leaders later on, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they have learned their lessons, and a lot of them actually have modified. They have adapted free market economies and capitalism, and to a lot of, to some extent, democracy as well. And Isaias Afewerki is one of those who never bought into that he thinks the command economy, the communist way, is the way to go. Unfortunately, the result is what we are looking at today.
I see.
So,
okay.
I hope I have explained your question.
All right, it does totally. And this leads to my next question. You know, you talk about people being forced into military service with no pay for years, and this has started right before during the independence war that lasted for close to 30 years. But do you think that the reason why President Isaias Afewerki is trying to have a big military is because he's afraid of Eritrea being annexed again or invaded by a neighborhood country? Because from what I've gathered from my research, it seems like Eritrea doesn't really have a good relationship with its neighbors. It has very tense relationship with Ethiopia, of course, since it's colonized it. It also has a very tense situation with Sudan, and I don't know if maybe this is done out of extreme nationalism and overprotectiveness of the country. Maybe he's afraid that if he let go and there is no strong military, for neighborhood countries might at any time come in again and invade the country. Do you think that might be the justification for him wanting to have such military rule? Yes, Daniel.
Okay, me?
Yeah, Daniel, just continue. Yeah, hello?
Oh yeah, I'm not sure who was that.
Yeah, that question is directed to you, Daniel. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure. Well, earlier I said earlier, it's a one-man authoritarian rule, which is to say, it's almost as if the country is his own property and he can do as he may.
Okay.
So if his personality is that he doesn't trust anyone and he's paranoid about the neighboring countries and the international system and the United Nations and the European Union, the African Union, and everyone else for that matter, including his own citizens, his fellow fighters.
Okay.
So Eritrea's foreign policy is basically an extension of his personality. He is very paranoid. His personality is like that, and I guess for somebody who has been kind of a brute and a dictator for such a long time, he thinks he has to outsmart everyone and be extra paranoid.
Okay.
So the reason for maintaining such a huge military, it doesn't justify it really. Of course, the wars that we've been through, Ethiopia's occupation of Eritrea for 30 years is real, and the people actually fought together and they achieved their independence.
I see.
But now, the policy that he's following is more of his personality, and I don't think it represents the Eritrean people of what they are afraid of or what their aspirations are.
All right, I see. Thank you very much, Daniel.
If I can add one thing on that.
Yes, please go ahead, Aaron. We're listening.
You know, one of the reasons he wants to have a big army is, you know, in order to control the society. You know, it is always easier to control a society if you militarize them. For example, if every individual is trained as a military, they can be called anytime to their unit,
I see.
and they can be disciplined with a military way.
Okay.
So as a result, you will not have a lot of opposition comes from the people. So everybody would afraid the military rule or the military punishment.
Okay.
So as a result, everybody is always afraid of him. So he wants us to have a big army. He wants everybody to be trained. As a result, he would have, a big army at the same time. He would have a very disciplined society who could listen him, anytime, whenever he wanted.
I see.
So that could be another reason.
That is a great insight. Thank you, Aaron. Dear listeners, the phone lines are now open. You can join the conversation by calling us on 240-813-4996. Once again, 240-813-4916. We are broadcasting from the Washington, D.C. area. This is Countdown, Farida and Nabourema. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Daniel, for being with us today. My next question goes to you. I'll just keep going on with you, Aaron. You were the editor-in-chief of Eritrea's largest independent newspaper, Set It, if I'm right. And in 2001, you were obliged to escape the country, and then you went to Sudan before settling down in Toronto. Can you please tell us what happened? What forced you into leaving your country?
Thank you, Farida. During 2001, the Eritrean government shut all independent newspapers, including Fatit, the newspaper that I was editing and co-founded. And he came to arrest us. So most of the journalists were arrested, but luckily I was not at home that night, so I managed to flee. And the reason I fled, leaving everything I love behind, is because everything, the tools that I had to fight the government in a civilized way is seized by the government. So I had nothing left but to flee the country, because I know in Eritrea, being arrested means you are dead. So what does it mean. So that's why I fled my country, leaving all my colleagues behind. So most of them are in jail. Already 5 of them have died in prison.
Seriously?
And the government hasn't filed any charge against them.
That is very sad.
And since then, there is no independent press in the country. About 30 journalists, as we speak, about 30 journalists are in prison. And nobody knows their whereabouts.
Wow.
So that is a very, very sad situation in terms of the press freedom in Eritrea.
And the same thing happened to cabinet members in early 2001. They were jailed when they called for constitutional implementation and change. Is there any particular actions that is being taken in the diaspora to pressurize the government in order to have them released, or at least, to give them a fair trial?
There are so many activities is going on in diaspora to help the reformers who are in jail to be released, the journalists who are in jail to be released, the Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, even the Eritrean movement. They have been doing so many things to put pressure against the Eritrean government. But unfortunately, we are not able to convince or persuade the government to do the right thing. So as a result, we see all those reformist journalists, all those innocent Eritrean citizens are dying in prison. So still we are trying to push in every way, but it doesn't seem to work because we are not dealing with the right government.
Okay.
We are not dealing with the government who has a right system, because we are dealing with a mafia-type government. So that's why he's not trying to listen in a civilized way.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have a friend online. Who are we speaking to today? Hello? Hello? So we just continue while we try to get our friend back. Aaron, thank you for that information. The other thing that I'm going to ask is regarding your organization, the Eritrean Youth Solidarity for Change. And maybe I should first direct this question to Daniel. Daniel, can you please elaborate a little bit on how your organization was created and what are your activities, what are your tools in order to better the life of the Eritreans, both in Eritrea and outside of Eritrea?
Yes, it will be my pleasure.
Thank you.
By the way, ever since I should say independence, even though the Eritrean people have given the new regime the benefit of the doubt, Eritreans have always objected to this dictatorial tendency of the leader.
Mm-hmm.
But he was pretty popular, and he achieved, and he was a leader of the movement that achieved independence. So between in the early 90s, all the way to 1997, people gave the system a benefit of the doubt, where it would implement the constitution, and there would be freedoms, and finally what Eritreans have aspired would come true.
Mm-hmm.
And then somehow his dictatorial tendencies, and he is a one-man decision maker, and he decided to go to war with Ethiopia somehow. And the years that follow, and what you're referring to in 2001, where there was protest even from his fellow leaders, and he put them in, basically summarily arrested a lot of journalists, a lot of leaders, military leaders, religious leaders, community leaders, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So the opposition basically intensified, and I'm going to try to attach what I'm saying to our movement over here. And the reason I'm mentioning that is that we are basically the EYSC, Eritrean Youth Solidarity for Change. It's basically an extension of the movement that already existed. But what was missing probably in the last 10 years was the involvement of the younger generation.
Okay.
The older generation, what we refer to the people who fought for freedom during the liberation era,
yes,
were the ones who were actually opposing the system actively, but they were not being effective.
Okay.
So in the last few years, especially since 2011, once the world saw what young people, when they get organized online, especially using Facebook and Twitter and other means.
So social media is playing a huge role here.
Absolutely. They were able to translate what they did online, offline, into actual revolutions.
I see.
Now, of course, we always knew Eritrea's case was different, but at least what we are trying to do is, if we can actually organize our people in the diaspora, and they can publicly call for the dictator to resign, for the prisoners of conscience to be released, for the unlimited military service to end, and for the country to swiftly transition into a democratic governance, there is a chance. And I think that part is working. The people have waken up, at least where they can exercise their freedoms. Now, what is missing is, because there is no freedom of assembly. There is no private press.
Yes.
Basically, people have no rights in Eritrea. So trying to replicate what we have is hard, but what we are trying to do is using creative mass mobilization, creative media to send our message into the country. Shortwave radio being one of them. Satellite radio is also being used. Even robocalls to cell phones and house phones are being used to send a message to basically call for the Eritrean people to just not be afraid anymore, stand up for their rights, and that their brothers and sisters and their parents and their fellow countrymen who live in societies where freedom is allowed have not forgotten them. And I think that's what we are doing.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. We will be taking a short break for a few minutes, and we will be back in Countdown with Farida and Nabourema. Thanks again to our guests, Daniel Mikael and Aaron Berhane from Toronto and California. We will be back. Thank you.
See your papa, learning, she lies, on a Sunday.
Good afternoon again and good evening for those of you who are living in the United States eastern part. It's the night here. Thank you very much for being with us, and thank you very much for bearing with us and being patient. We hope you enjoyed the music. I'm back on Countdown with Aaron Berhane from Toronto and Daniel Mikael from the California Bay Area. We were discussing Eritrean politics, and we hope you're enjoying the show so far. Once again, for those of you who like to listen to the show, just listen to the show from your phone, then you should be calling 832-280-0673, 832-280-0673, and select the number 1. That's for those of you who want to listen to the show from your phone. And if you want to call in because you have any question, if you want to ask any question to our guest and give an impression, please call us on 240-813-4996, 240-813-4996. This is Farida and Nabourema, and we are broadcasting live from the Washington, D.C. area. So let's go back to our interview. My next question goes to Aaron. Aaron, the question that I have for you now is that, as you've said it earlier on, in Eritrea, there is no freedom of press. There is no freedom of movement. There is no freedom of speech. In some ways, it is like a country with no freedom at all. But at the same time, you mentioned that journalists are arrested, they are jailed with no trial. People who try to voice anything against the government are also put in jail. So, of course, there must be an opposition. You are the opposition, but you live outside of the country. So how do the Eritrean people who live in Eritrea and are against the government organize? How do they organize? Have there ever been any protests in the past? Do they write, some flyers and distribute it? How do they organize to fight against the government?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yes?
I'm sorry, I'm a caller and I wanted to ask your panel a question.
Oh, thank you very much. What is your name, please?
My name is Kwame.
Hi, Kwame. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you very much. I just want to say this is a great show.
Thank you.
I'm enjoying it. I'm actually from Ghana, and I don't know anything about Eritrea.
Okay.
So I've had to learn a lot. This is Eritrea 101. So thank you, and thank you. Thanks to your panelists. Very insightful and very knowledgeable.
Thank you.
Very articulate.
Well, we're very happy that you like it.
Yes, but my question here, and I mean, I don't mean to play the devil's advocate, but I was listening to, I'm not sure if it was Aaron or
Daniel.
Daniel, but one of them had to, set out to explain how they are going about mobilizing people and making them aware on how they can effect change and how they can demand democracy and freedom. And I think the tools they are using, honestly, I don't even think America thinks about that far. So I want to congratulate them. But the question is that, do you not think that somebody would say, you are sitting here in the comfort of your homes in California or in Canada, enjoying all the, the nice things, and you are asking these people back home, you're sending robocalls
you are sending, this satellite information and all that, for them to stand up and, go and basically fight. And mind you, you have an authoritarian, a tyrant in power who will crush these people. So how do you defend yourself? To say that they should go and lead the fight, they should go and mobilize themselves and keep the good fight going while you sit back here.
That is a very good question, Kwame. Thank you very much for asking that. I believe it is a question that comes in every time diaspora activists are involved. It is one of the biggest criticisms of diaspora activists. Like, you are living abroad, comfortable sitting in your living room and asking people to fight. So, it is a criticism, and I really want to know what Daniel and Aaron have to say about that, because I believe they have heard these questions in the past.
And before I let them answer, I want to say that, personally, I support them 100%. I will do what they're doing, but I'm sure other people, would ask this question. So I would like to hear their response. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kwame. Before we move on, before you respond, I'm gonna ask one other listener who just joined us to ask his question, so that you can answer both together. Good afternoon and good evening. Who are we speaking with today? Hello? Hello? Okay, I believe we lost our new listener, so I'm just going to let you, Daniel and Aaron, answer Kwame's question, and hopefully one of the listeners will come back. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
so who goes first? Daniel? Okay.
Yeah, so this is Daniel, yes. By the way, just to make a quick correction, I'm in the Los Angeles area, and I agree with Kwame that, yes, I definitely am in my comfortable home. Kwame mentioned that he's from Ghana, but before I answer, I just want to say the Black Stars of Ghana have just qualified for the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, and I'm a number one fan, so I just want to say, go Black Stars, and I think they're going to go all the way in Brazil and win FIFA.
That's great.
Now, going back to his very good question, by the way, thank you for your kind words, but it is an honest question that we all have to answer, and this will be a good opportunity for us also to clarify. First of all, what we are calling our people to do is to not necessarily, we are not calling for any kind of violence, but to stand up to dictatorship, to express their dissatisfaction. And when we say it's a one-man rule, that also the tools of the dictatorship, like the military or the police, they are the ones who are also being suppressed in this case. So it's also calling upon them to remove the dictator, and of course we can say that we are calling them to do that, but when we are talking about a one-man, probably a few circle items, less than 100 of his closest espionage network is probably what we are talking about. And for a country that has fought for 30 years to attain freedom and self-determination and all that, it is just unfortunate that it is left for one man to do this to them. So, of course, we have an option, that is to, and a lot of our fellow citizens are doing that, is to say nothing because we already live in the West comfortably, and our personal safety and our personal freedoms at this time are not affected. But if we do that, the only winner would be the one-man dictator, and that's what he would like us to do. Now, the second option is to use the tools that are, resources that we have, these humble tools that we have, and encourage people that silence and keeping quiet is not a solution. And the Eritrean people actually have tried that for a long time now, for more than 20 years. So it's only after all this that we are encouraging people to stand up for their right and to take ownership of their own future in their own country. And I don't think that is too much to ask or or unfair thing to do. Because the second option, or I should say the third option, is to actually for us to say what we are saying now and actually go into Eritrea ourselves. And we know that would be probably the most ineffective way of doing this, because literally tens of thousands of people like us who have voiced their opinion have been placed in jail. And we are trying to change that in the being in the diaspora gives us certain advantages. And I'll let my friend Aaron add to that.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, go ahead,
Let me add
Aaron.
a little bit, Farida. Yeah, thank you very much for the caller. This is a very, very valid question. It is asked by so many people, so all the time, so we have to address it properly. First of all, we have been there, and we did our best to change the system, to persuade the government with the tools that we had while we were inside Eritrea. Unfortunately, we reached to the level that we could no more live in that country, and we managed to flee. So the Eritrean people who live there, so they realized that. And most of them, they are really happy to hear us voicing their words or voicing their concerns from outside. What they don't like is, once you flood your country, and if you shut up and keep quiet and enjoying your Western life, that is what they don't like. So what we are trying to do is, as Daniel mentioned, is we don't really push them to do anything or risk to their life. But just to stand up for their rights, and at the same time, because the Eritrean government tries to black out, there is an information blackout in Eritrea. The government doesn't provide them information. So we do our best to let them know what is going on from outside to change this dictatorial regime. So we just remind them to play their part and to do something solid with a very conscious way. So we don't really push them like doing something very, very risky to their life, which we didn't do ourselves at the first place.
Okay, thank you very much, Aaron. This leads to the question I was asking before Kwame joined us, which is, how do people organize on the ground? Because it is obvious that it is very hard for people to voice their minds against the government. So how do people organize on the ground?
The people inside Eritrea, it is very, very hard for them to organize themselves and fight the region. So that's why we try to mobilize the people from outside. And that's why we try to help them from outside. But they play a great role, because since they don't have right to assemble more than 5 people, what they do, they provide us information. They tell us what is going on in Eritrea. Because most telephone lines in Eritrea are taped. So every conversation could be heard by the security agents of the government. So that's why most Eritreans, they are very careful when they speak on the phone. So it is very, very difficult to get accurate information in Eritrea. But those activists who live in Eritrea, who really want this region to be changed as soon as possible, they send letters, they send what we call Yahoo messages. They do their best to provide us information so that we can use it for, for the struggle that we are organizing from outside. But it is very difficult for them to organize themselves, but still, even though it is very risky for their life, still there are some organizations inside Eritrea, and they do it in a very, very secret way. And one example, if I could mention, is there was an attempt to overthrow the government in January 2013. Unfortunately, that coup didn't go well, but that is the result of dissatisfaction of most Eritrean people in the army. So there is always a movement, but it is not visible, and it is very hard to see that movement, what you call surfaced well.
Okay.
Of course, there are some flyers, by the way. People, they distribute flyers, not with organized way, but just with their own way. So you see so many activities going on inside the country.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. As we're kind of like running out of time, unfortunately, I still have plenty of questions for you guys, but I'm going to ask, the last ones that I have. I'm going to give this one to Daniel. Daniel, how do you see Eritrea freeing itself? Like, how do you see this change happening? Do you think it's going to be a popular revolution or a military coup? Or there's going to be people who are going to have to launch a rebel movement? How do you see a possible outcome for this political system? How do you see it end?
Thanks, Farida. At the end of the day, because it's a one-man dictatorship, that one man has to be eliminated from the picture. Now, the people who can effectively do this, if we are learning from the rest of the world on the consequence of doing that, is what was tried in January, and even though it was done by the military, there was hardly any shots fired. They simply took over the Ministry of Information and made their demand heard.
Okay.
So something like that could be the best case scenario that we can think of. Otherwise, the alternative, the consequence of internal strife could cost a lot of people their lives, and we are also trying to avoid doing that.
Okay. So my question, this one goes to Aaron. Aaron, what message will you give to the people who are listening to us all over the world today, whether they are Eritrean or not, on how to assist the Eritrean people in freeing their country? What is going to be your recommendation to them?
What I would like to say to our listeners, your listeners, either Eritrean or non-Eritrean, especially, African.
Yes.
We have to do something because we are experiencing the same problem in every country almost. We have been what you call victimized by dictators. So what we should do is, it is always good to learn the problem of each country, and we have to find a way to help each other in order to change the way African countries run, because the trend has been the same for almost 4 decades. So we have to do something to change that, because sometimes we feel guilty. Okay, we are living outside our country and speaking about our country. It might seem hypocritic, but we shouldn't see on that angle. Because we have to use that leverage we have in the Western world, and we have to cooperate each other, and with a united voice, then we can do lobbying, and we can cooperate each other to change not only Eritrean dictatorial region, even Western countries or Southern or Northern, every part of Africa.
That's right. Daniel, do you have a final message for our listeners and the Eritrean youths in particular who might be listening to this show today, or maybe to the podcast in the future?
Absolutely. By the way, thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you also to your listeners and the people who ask the questions.
Thank you.
The lesson, Eritrea's lesson, is that Eritrea was supposed to be one of the last countries, the southern countries in Africa, so it was supposed to have learned from the rest of Africa on how not to do things.
Yes.
But now, finally, in this 21st century, given this new technology and new resources we have all over the world, including Africa, the Africans as citizens, not only Eritreans, but every member of the African continent, we should, there is nothing that stops us from advocating for human development, for more economic opportunity, for demanding changes from those who govern us, for demanding that safety and rule of law are basically human rights. And I think the younger generation is learning to do that, to be vocal, and unlike generations past. And the lesson to African dictators is that this is not the 20th century where you can basically turn a country like Eritrea into an open-air prison and do what you may. Those days are gone, and people are rising, and like your the name of your show aptly says, that the countdown towards zero dictatorship has already begun, and we are glad to be part of that process.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Daniel. I was very happy to have you here today. It is a great pleasure for us. We just run out of time. The show is from 8 to 9, and unfortunately, we were not able to cover everything because Eritrea has such a vivid and resourceful story, and there is a lot that we still need to learn about your country, about your struggle, about your endeavors, your achievements, and unfortunately, we were not able to cover all this. We hope to have you back on air in the future, probably in the next upcoming weeks, and I would really like to thank you again. Thank you for being here today and giving this great insight on your country. We wish you well in your struggle, and we hope to have you back. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Farida, for having us.
You're very welcome.
Likewise, Farida, and thank you for the opportunity, and it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
You're very welcome.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night. So, dear listeners, we are very happy for you to be here and listen to us. We hope it was a great show and you enjoyed it. This was the first countdown. It is indeed the countdown for all dictatorships in Africa, and we hope to have you soon. In the upcoming days, hopefully next week, we will be discussing the politics of Djibouti, which is also an eastern country of Africa. It is one of the neighbors of Eritrea. We want you to know more about Djibouti as well, which has also known a dictator for the past 30 years. We hope you will be tuned and you will be with us. We hope to have more questions. You can also call us, listen via tune in on the website, or you just test your questions to our cell phone number. So thank you very much for being here today. I hope you enjoyed the show. This is Farida and Nabourema in Countdown, and please keep counting down till the next show.